On Thanksgiving, my daughter told me to apologize to a man who had never once thanked me for anything in 4 years. My son-in-law smiled at me like the outcome was already settled. He didn't know what I'd already signed away in my head before I even stood up from that table. 3 days later, he found out. Welcome to Dad's Pure Revenge. My name is Dean Brooks, and before I tell you what happened in that dining room, do me a favor. Tell me where you're watching from tonight. Drop it in the comments, and if this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe now. You're going to want to see how this one ends. I need to tell you about my wife first, because none of the rest of this makes sense without her. Claire Brooks kept a coffee can of quarters by the front door of our house on Winder Street, and every single week, rain or shine, she gave 2 of them to the boy who delivered our paper, even after the paper stopped being delivered and started just showing up soggy in the driveway on Sundays. She remembered the names of every clerk's kid at my hardware store, not just the clerks. She used to sew little strips of cloth into the aprons at Brooks Hardware, with each employee's first name stitched on, by hand, because the store-bought name tags kept falling off, and she said a man deserves to be called by his actual name at work. When a young mother came into the store one October trying to return a space heater because her card got declined, Claire, who was 63 years old and had never worked a register a day in her life, walked over, paid for it out of her own purse, and told the woman to come back and get a second one in January when it got worse. She never mentioned it again. I only found out because the woman wrote us a letter the following spring. Claire passed 18 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in March, gone by September. I'm telling you this now because you need to understand what kind of person my son-in-law thought he could talk about the way he did. I'm 61. I run Brooks Hardware on Elm Street in Marion, Ohio. Same storefront my father opened in 1968. Same brick. Same bell over the door that still doesn't ring right. I'm not a complicated man. I show up early, I balance my own books, and for 4 years I let my son-in-law say things to me that I should have stopped the first time they left his mouth. That's my fault, not his. The first time he called my store a nice little hobby in front of 2 of my own employees, I laughed along with him. Because Claire had just been diagnosed, and I didn't have the strength that month to make Thanksgiving smaller than it already was. After that, it just kept being easier to laugh along than to say something. I want to be honest with you about that, because I don't think I come out of this story looking perfect, and I don't want to pretend otherwise. My daughter's name is Natalie. She married a man named Travis Brennan 4 years ago. Travis runs a construction supply company on the north side of town called Brennan Build Supply, and for the last year and a half, it had been struggling. I didn't know the full extent of it. I knew pieces. Thursday, November 26th, 2:47 in the afternoon. Natalie and Travis's house on Featherstone Lane. Dining room table set for 8. The good tablecloth Claire used to fold into the hall closet, now folded by somebody else. I remember the exact time because I'd looked at my watch right before Travis started talking business over the turkey, and I remember thinking, not yet, not today. Dean, he said, cutting his stuffing into perfect little squares, not looking up. We should talk about the store transfer before the 4th. Neil and Kessler need everything finalized by December 1st for the paperwork to clear before year-end. I told him this wasn't the table for it. He kept cutting. It's not getting any smaller, though. Brennan Build's carrying some weight right now. I don't love bringing it up over turkey either, but your wife's not around to weigh in on the family finances anymore, so it's really just you and me who need to sort this out. The room went quiet, the way a room goes quiet when everybody heard something, and nobody wants to be the one who reacts first. My niece stopped chewing. My daughter looked down at her plate. I said his name, and I said it wasn't his place to decide when Claire got to be part of a conversation, alive or not. I said it evenly. I didn't raise my voice. Looking back, that might have been the part that actually landed. Not the words, but that I wasn't shaking when I said them. Travis set his fork down. He didn't apologize. He looked almost amused, like I'd confirmed something he'd suspected about me for years. Everybody's a little touchy today, he said, to the table. Not to me. That's when Natalie stood up. She didn't yell right away. She said my name first, quiet, like she was trying to give me a chance to fix it myself. I didn't take it, because I didn't think there was anything to fix. Then she wasn't quiet anymore. Apologize to my husband. Right now. Or you're no longer my father. Travis smirked. That's the word for it. Not a smile. A smirk. Small and satisfied. The look of a man watching a debt get collected. I stood up. My chair made a sound against the hardwood that I can still hear. I looked at my daughter, and I said 5 words. Then I'm no longer yours. I picked my coat up off the back of the chair, the same navy coat Claire bought me for our 30th anniversary, and I walked out through the kitchen, past the sweet potatoes nobody had touched yet, out the side door into air that felt like it had a temperature and nothing else. No smell, no weight, just cold. A dog 2 houses down barked twice. I got into my truck, a 2016 Ford F-150 with 110,000 miles on it, and I sat there for a minute before I turned the key, because my hands needed a minute. I want to pause here and say, if you've ever had a moment where the people who were supposed to be in your corner made you feel like the outsider in your own family, I want you to know you're not the only one. Hit that like button if this is hitting somewhere real for you. We're just getting started. Now I have to back up a little, because there's a piece of this you need before I tell you what I did next. Her name is Sadie Holloway. She was Claire's home hospice nurse for the last 4 months of her life, and she kept coming around long after her job ended. Every Sunday since the funeral, Sadie shows up at my door around 6 in the evening with a thermos of something, chili or soup, or once just black coffee, because she said I looked like I needed the company more than the meal. She never asks anything of me. She just shows up. I hadn't thought much about what that meant until I was driving home from Featherstone Lane with my jaw still tight, and it occurred to me that Sadie Holloway had shown up for my family more consistently in 18 months than my son-in-law had in 4 years. There was something else I'd noticed over the past year and hadn't looked at straight on. Natalie used to call me on her own, just to talk, Tuesday afternoons usually, ever since she was in college. Sometime last winter those calls started coming with Travis's voice in the background, prompting her, correcting the reason she'd called. I told myself she was just busy. I didn't want to be the father who counted his daughter's phone calls like evidence, so I let it sit there, unexamined, filed under things that were probably nothing. Driving home that night, it stopped being nothing. I wasn't deciding anything new. I want to be clear about that. The decision had already made itself somewhere between the pie I didn't eat and the driveway I was now sitting in. I was just catching up to something that had already happened inside me. Here's what you need to know about the store transfer Travis was so eager to finalize by December 1st. It wasn't some idea he'd cooked up out of nowhere. I had, in fact, been planning to sign over 50% ownership of Brooks Hardware to Natalie as a Christmas gift, something Claire and I had talked about years before she got sick. A way of making sure the store, and everything her name was stitched into, stayed in the family. The appointment with my attorney, a man named Grant Holloway, no relation to Sadie, small towns just repeat names sometimes, was already on the books for that Monday, December 1st, at 10 in the morning. Friday, November 27th, 9:15 in the morning, I called Grant and moved the appointment up. I sat in his office on Center Street with my coat still on, and I told him I wanted to change what I was signing. I didn't leave Natalie out because I stopped loving her. I left Travis out because a man doesn't get to insult a woman 2 years in her grave and then collect on her legacy the same week. The new paperwork set up a trust. Half the store's ownership would transfer, eventually, to a scholarship fund at Marion General Hospital, established in Claire Brooks's name, for hospice and home care nurses finishing their training. The exact work Sadie Holloway does every day for people who can't repay her. The other half stayed with me, with Sadie named as the store's general manager and given a path to buy in over the next 10 years, the way I once bought in from my own father. Natalie's name wasn't on a single page. Neither was Travis's. Grant asked me twice if I was sure, because that's his job, and I told him I hadn't been this sure of anything in 18 months. We signed it Saturday morning, November 28th, notarized and filed the same day. Now here's the part where the clock Travis had been counting on started working against him instead. I found out later, from Natalie, eventually in a conversation I'll get to, that Brennan Build Supply was carrying almost $200,000 in short-term debt, and that Travis had told his own business partner the Brooks hardware transfer was as good as done. Collateral already accounted for on paper that hadn't been signed by anyone but him. He'd been telling people it was finished before I'd agreed to a single word of it. Sunday, November 29th. My phone had been quiet since I walked out of that house Thursday. Then it wasn't. 4 missed calls by 9 in the morning. 11 by noon. Text messages from Natalie that went from short to long to short again. Dad, call me. Then paragraphs. Then just, please. 19 missed calls by 3 that afternoon. A voicemail from Travis, and I want you to hear how his voice changed. No smirk in it anymore. No business over turkey calm. Just a man doing math out loud and not liking the answer. 27 missed calls by 6. She had no idea what I'd already done on Friday morning. She would, soon enough. If you're new to this channel, this is usually the part where things get interesting. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in a story like this one. 34 missed calls by Sunday night. I let almost all of them go. Not out of spite. I genuinely didn't have anything left to say that hadn't already been said with a pen at Grant Holloway's office. Monday, November 30th, 7:50 in the morning, they were on my porch. Not called ahead, not texted first, just there. On the same welcome mat Claire picked out at a hardware convention in Columbus in 2009, a plain thing that said home in faded block letters. Natalie's eyes were swollen. Travis stood half a step behind her, which told me something on its own, since he was never a man who stood half a step behind anybody. I made coffee. I didn't make a show of it, and I didn't make them wait on the porch either. I'm still their family, whatever else is true. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one from the house on Winder Street, and Natalie asked what I'd done. I told her plainly. The store, the trust, Claire's name on the scholarship, Sadie as manager. I kept my voice at the same level I'd use ordering a coffee. That seemed to unsettle Travis more than if I'd shouted, because there was nothing left for him to push against. He was the one who came apart first, not her. He said this wasn't legal, that I couldn't just change my mind, that he'd already told people. I told him I understood that was a problem for him and that it wasn't one I'd created. You did this because of one comment at dinner, he said. I did this, I said, because of 4 years of comments, and because you brought my wife into it like she was a line item. That's the whole reason. There isn't a second one you need to go looking for. Natalie didn't defend him this time. She sat there with both hands around her coffee mug, not drinking it, and asked me, quietly, if there was any way to undo it. I told her the trust was filed, notarized, done, but that wasn't really her question, and we both knew it. Her real question was whether there was any way to undo Thursday. I told her I loved her. I told her that hadn't changed and wasn't going to, but I also told her I wasn't apologizing for defending her mother's memory in her mother's own family, and that if she ever wanted to sit at my table again without him standing half a step behind her, she knew where I lived. Travis left first. Natalie stayed another 20 minutes, and for the first time in longer than I want to admit, it was just the two of us talking. No third voice correcting the reason she'd come. I'm not going to tell you Brennan Build Supply collapsed, because I don't know that, and I'm not interested in reporting on a man's business failures like they're a scoreboard. What I can tell you is that Sadie Holloway took over as general manager of Brooks Hardware 2 weeks later, and the first thing she did was stitch her own name into an apron, the same way Claire used to do for everyone else. I still get the thermos every Sunday at 6. Some weeks, Natalie calls on her own now, on a Tuesday. No other voice in the background. I don't know if that door with Travis ever opens again, and I've stopped needing it to. I'm not waiting on an apology from him to feel settled about the choice I made in that lawyer's office. I already feel settled. That's the part I didn't expect. How quiet it is on the other side of not needing something from someone anymore. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's that you don't have to earn your place at your own table by staying quiet when it matters. Loyalty that only runs one direction isn't loyalty, it's an arrangement, and you're allowed to stop renewing it. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you've ever had to walk away from your own table to remember who you were. I read every one. I'll see you in the next story.